Mm, so what does a dancing the dragon yoga class look like, feel like, right? So there's seven stages, seven stages or phases of the class, seven sections of the class. And depending on the focus for the class, some of those sections may be very brief and sometimes they may be elongated, right? So there's a lot of fluidity or flexibility in how you touch on and express each of these seven aspects depending on the context for the actual practice. Because how you do it at home in a home practice, how I would deliver it in a studio or at a festival or on a retreat or at a training, it's all going to be different, right? So it's very contextual. It's important to recognize that the contextual nature. And this is why I've set it up like this. It's not a set sequence. It cannot be a set sequence because that just does not compute when we're working from orientation to awareness, right? And the arising of energy and allowing that energy to freely move according to the needs of the person and the intention that's been set. So I'm going to go through those seven stages. The first stage is very much a grounding in earth, right? And it's prayer, invocation, and intention. So this is our opening ceremony, you could say, for the practice, for the class, and it's about accessing the subtle realms. It's about dropping out of ordinary, limited reality and into expanded. You could say non-ordinary. For some of us, it is ordinary, non-ordinary reality. So we say our prayers, right? And in that, we might be honoring the ancestors, for example, or we might be working with our own particular lineage or our own particular culture and how we say these prayers. And there might be invocation. What are we invoking as we move through this particular practice? And intention, clarity of intention. So, a big part of Dancing the Dragon is learning how to work with intention in the field. And when we do it time and time again in a class or in a practice, we start to be able to collect data points and we start to be able to see the results. We start to understand how intention really, truly functions, right? Because when we set a super clear intention, whatever is in the way of that intention coming through into material existence needs to come into the light and be incinerated or come into the light, be devoured, digested, and dissolved. So we set the intention at the beginning of the class so that the practice itself can do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of flushing out, devouring, digesting, and dissolving whatever's in the way of that intention coming through to fruition. So, from that perspective, you could say it's ceremony. It's a ceremony that we are doing here. It's magic, right? All right, so that's section one, earth element and setting prayer, invocation, intention, accessing the subtle realms. Then we move into air. So coming up to air to work with Kriyā, specifically the movements, the five movements of prana, the five vāyus, the five winds within the yogic view, you could say, right? And so, for example, we might be working with a very simple Kriyā where we're aligning to Vyana Vayu, right? Radiating and expanding in all directions, and Samana Vayu, contracting to the core. And in this, we're also starting to set out what will be the core movement pattern throughout the class. But we work from the most subtle realm first to really begin to sense and feel the movement itself of energy. And at this point, sometimes we might do a shaking practice if it's required. So the shaking aspect is fluid. It can slot in here, section two, air with Kriyā, or it can slot in later with yoga trance sounds, right? So there's also here we're working with the settling of the nervous system. So that's an aspect that's happening in section two. So air, it is working with the Vayu Kriyas and shaking, shifting the nervous system. And we move into three, which is water. So we're getting a little more dense. Now we've got our foundation, right, of earth to support the water, right? And the air is moving. So now we're coming into variations of Surya Namaskar, right? Variations of sun salutations. It's not a great translation of that word. And Āsana flow. And this is very much about activating energy and clearing the nāḍīs. It's about beginning to flush up the samskaras, the unresolved emotional patterns and impressions, and vikalpas, the stories, the beliefs that are keeping us stuck, right? That just aren't true, that are conditioning, or you could say trauma. But that's what we're working with in section 3. Water, asana flow, activating energy, and clearing the nāḍīs. And this is where we work a lot with whatever our core movement pattern is. And we work with that movement pattern in a variety of different ways. Okay, then we move into section 4, which is fire, coming into yoga trance dance, which is now we are literally burning in the fire. So this is when we bring in the intensity. It's often when we bring in the warrior energy, whatever that might be. And it's definitely about mastering the mind as we push our body beyond what we perceive to be its physical limits. And we choose to stay in the fire and keep doing the thing over and over and over and over and over and over again, even when the mind is screaming, I can't, and the body muscles are going, oh my God, we stay. And we let it burn in the fire. You know, you think about something like Sundance, the intense physicality of dancing under the sun for 4 days with no food and water, not just for yourself, right? But for your family and for your community and for vision. We sacrifice so little in our day-to-day life. And so when we come into the fire section, this is what it's about. What are you prepared to give? What are you prepared to sacrifice? How do you show up for yourself, for your family, for your community when it's hard, when it's tough, when it hurts, when you can't, and there is a training in that, right? We're recalibrating the nervous system to go beyond comfort, to get resilient, to be able to stay. And who knows when in your life you might need that. And then as we peak and you just think you can't do any more, we're back to earth and water. Floor asana, often yin style. So now we're in the integration and restoration. So there can be still some fluid movement coming through here as we come down to the floor. And eventually it comes into yin style poses where you'll be holding for 3 to 5 minutes. And again, with yin, the body gets to melt, but the mind will often kick back because now we're working deep into the fascia. And as we work deep into the fascia, particularly with all the work we've done through the asana flow and through the yoga trance dance, we have prepared the ground, you could say, to go even deeper in the yin. And often the really deep samskaras, unresolved emotion, etc., will start to surface. And this is where the mind will try and keep us safe. The mind will try and protect us. So we have an opportunity to practice discerning when the mind is trying to protect us and it's actually safe to soften, to surrender, to let go, to drop in. And this is the earth, water, floor asana and yin section, section 5. And then from here we roll into section 6, which is space, Śavāsana. And we just dissolve into that awareness, right? That which we are. Allowing whatever's arising and subsiding, the thoughts, feelings, sensations, letting it all come and go as we know ourselves as that, the eternal, infinite, unchanging essence nature, Shiva nature, consciousness. Then from Śavāsana, we sit up. We come into meditation where everything, all the elements, we begin to sit in the center of them all: earth, water, fire, air, space, and we are the center of them all. Dropping into the meditation, where there's often some chanting, often Ucchāra practice, working with the bija mantras of Ucchāra in a very simple way. And the beautiful thing about Ucchāra practice is that it effortlessly, through the sonic sound needle, again, pierces through our psychic gunk and allows it to all burn up in the fire of awareness. And as we sit there in the meditation with the chanting, right, our practice is beginning to come to a close, and we are re-emerging, knowing ourselves as essence, nature, knowing ourselves as that. And that's the arc of a dancing the dragon yoga practice. So much love to my teachers, to Śavāsana, who I learned prana flow vinyasa from, and yoga trance dance. Right? Also to Cameron Shane, who showed me how to use sections to put together an overall frame and gave me a sense of how to structure a yoga practice for a specific purpose or result. And also to the teachers of philosophy, Christopher Wallace and Hashira, and to Christopher Tompkins, from whom I learned and practiced Ucchāra practice with, right? All of these threads and so many more other teachers that I have spent time with, whether in books or podcasts or in dreams. Just so much gratitude for your guidance and your teachings, and I honor you all as I allow this particular approach to emerge and to birth through dancing the dragon yoga. An approach not just to yoga, but also to life. Come join me on Dance the Dragon with me. Yeah.